The problem of nature, nature even as fundamental problem, nature most notably with respect to the human and the divine. We begin from early antiquity. Our notion of nature, natura in Latin, is retraceable formally to that of physis in Greek. Now, physis is, in early antiquity, not something on its own. It is a term that refers to the way of things, of beings. So we have a dog who has a physis, a way of being a dog. That's the way he is. We have the way of women. Women are a certain way, and that's their nature. It is not that this nature is codified in mechanical terms, in numerical terms. It is not on its own. It is what that being ultimately is all about. So, the dog nature, the donkey's nature, the serpent's nature. And by that nature we shall know what we're talking about. Now, you might ask, however, what about the context in which certain beings exist? What are the beings that are most important in the ancient world? Well, all we need to do is look at their stories. And the stories are mostly about gods and men. And we could say that there are heroes, but heroes are a kind of mix between the two, right? Half gods, half men. But you can ask then, what about their context? Who's studying that context? Who's looking at that? Well, the context is a kind of dream, a kind of story. And indeed, ancient stories are the context of men and gods. So much so that certain recent scholars have started saying, well, this is all made up. There's no such thing as man. There's no such thing as a god, because it was the stories that made everything up. And, language creates all of this stuff out of nothing. But we'll get to this later. Now, we have the world that is a kind of dream. There's nothing really to ask about there, aside from men and gods, or rather the tension, the conflict, even the war between the two realms. If you want to understand that context, you just get back to that battle. It's a battlefield, we could say. Right. So, the Iliad, the Odyssey, these are stories, but the world itself is understood in terms of, well, stories. Now, this is not enough for certain, people who came about saying that no, beyond gods and men, there is a greater, shall we say, a greater story? But it's not really a story. It is the place of truth. That's what they posit as the true meaning of nature, physis. They posit a physis that is beyond the natures of people. So if you want to seek truth, right, if you're an honest man and you seek truth, then you are to go beyond men and gods into the realm of nature. In comes Socrates, and Socrates says, no, this realm of nature is an abstraction. We have to bring truth back onto the level of men. Otherwise, we end up in the absurd. We end up rejecting the wisdom of the fathers. We end up becoming shameless, not brave. We end up giving up on virtue for the sake of an empty knowledge. So, Socrates, of course, questions the knowledge of the sophists, and it turns out that they're just dreaming. They thought that they had attained to some kind of divine wisdom or super divine wisdom. They were wiser than the gods. In fact, they were just more foolish than the ordinary men. So, Socrates is telling us to go back on the level of men and somehow to return to the ancient poets, who had shown that there is the way of beings. What beings truly are, what they ultimately are, what we ultimately are, is our way of being. And this way of being is something that Socrates seeks to enter into, right? To dive into, to return to at any rate. He points us back to it as a fundamental problem, something that is met in the element of reflection. And he speaks about this something, this hidden form of things, as an idea, an eidos or idea. So this fundamental problem is the essence of everything that appears to us, a phenomenon. Right? So phenomena have an essence. Phenomena on the outside are a problem, a visible problem, but they conceal somehow an inner problem. And if we want to understand things, if we want to live well, we have to face that interiority of things and understand the world, enter into the world as a fully spiritual reality, not simply a dream. Yes, so men and gods are not really lost in a dream. They are the root of the dream. At the root of the dream, we find these fundamental problems that men and gods represent on the level of stories. Of course, there will be objections to Socrates. There will be still people who, call for abstractions. And in comes Christianity in response to this, this attack against Socratism. Christianity, of course, brings to the fore a God who vouches for Socratism, for the Socratic life, and this God is the overarching context for both nature and man. You say, nature, as posited by the Sophists, is not real. It is not a machine. It is the art of God. It is the art of God, ars Dei in Latin, by which God makes himself manifest as man. Ooh. So there are these three realms, God, nature, and man, that are intertwined, right? So nature turns out to be the art by which the divine manifests himself as human. The divine is the secret of the human, a secret that comes to the fore, right, through a certain art, and this art is nature. All right, so the ultimate context is the perfection of the human. The perfection of the human means the perfection of the understanding. So there's ultimate meaning, perfecta ratio in Latin, we will see in the Middle Ages, so perfect reason. It is perfect understanding, right? Pure mind. This language also tends to give the impression that God is an abstraction, but of course Christianity is all about the incarnation, so that is not really pertinent to the language, the discourse, the logos of Christianity. However, this positing of God beyond and over nature and man does open the door to a certain reprisal. So sophists come back and say, you know what? God is there, nature is there, and man is there, and there's a context, overarching context for the three of them. And that context is beyond all reason, because you said that all reason is perfect in God, and there he is, perfect reason, right there, geometrical, as per also Spinoza and others, students of Machiavelli. So what we have here is an overarching context which is beyond all reason, and thus it is the absurd. And these three elements, the gods, or God, rather, nature and man, are to be articulated in the context of the absurd. Somehow this articulation is to reflect the absence of understanding, the absurd, meaning no understanding, beyond the understanding. The understanding becomes a superficial facade for the lack of understanding, the impossibility of understanding. Somehow it reflects that impossibility, that void, that nothingness. And so more and more we wind up having mechanistic conceptions of nature, man, and God. God intervening to vouch for a mechanistic science of nature. Man understood more and more in terms of natural mechanisms, as needing God to pursue science, the modern science, mechanistic science, to establish, to transform the mechanisms in a way that is amenable. Well, it suits it suits man. And so we're going to establish a world that is safe for man, and this is the technological world, which ultimately reflects the unreason of this overarching context. So now the technological world, the world of perfect reason, where everything is rational, everything has a place, right, in mechanistic terms, of course, in which we have the perfect reason of God, we have nature, we have man, all together in the technological system. This system now reflects the unreason of its context. And that means that it exposes itself at all moment to a great conflagration. What is it that it's all about? It is about what is the underpinning context, the ground, which is unreason, chaos. So order is a manifestation of disorder. So as soon as, or as order is established, consolidated, the ground manifests itself absolutely as chaos. And so the ultimate order becomes the ultimate chaos. Ultimate democracy and freedom become the ultimate eclipse of freedom and tyranny ultimately. So here we have stories, really, that are alternatives that stand before us now. So which one makes more sense? Which one is more reflective of, the ultimate mystery of things? Is there an ultimate mystery, or is there only the absurd? Well, if you have thoughts to share on these problems, on these questions, don't hesitate to note them down in the comment section. We'll see how things work out.